Hello, welcome to Diverse Minds Dynamic Solutions. My name is Stephanie Farley, and I'm excited to talk to you about the power of inclusive innovation. I'm an industry strategist, board member, and consulting executive who's passionate about building diverse teams and dynamic solutions. We'll start first by imagining a future state where a diverse team is collaborating in an accessible physical environment and digital environment. Korn Ferry studied diversity and collated statistics and analysis on the metrics around diversity. It is a proven business outcome that when we harness the collective power of diversity, we deliver better and more innovative solutions. So, we'll first start by talking about some powerful statistics. So, diverse and inclusive teams are 70% more likely to capture new markets. 75% of inclusive innovators see those ideas become products and they successfully bring those to market. Companies that have above average diversity report 19% higher innovation revenue, and diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. So, now that we've shared some industry wide statistics on diversity and the power of inclusive teams, let's get a little personal. So, my story is that I was a senior leader for a large technology company, and I had a direct call to action back in 2020 from a group of incredible grassroots diversity champions who asked me and my organization to lead from the front in modeling and creating a work environment where diversity thrived and was at the forefront of all that we did, invested in our DNA of our culture. That call to action led me to become an executive sponsor and co sponsor for the Consulting DEI Council, comprised of people from all parts of consulting. And we work together to help infuse diversity throughout our consulting practice. I was lucky to work for a Fortune 500 company that had a lot of resource groups that were available to all members of consulting and broader throughout the organization. So, some of those employee resource groups included the Diverse Abilities Network, a women's leadership resource group, Asian professionals, Black professionals, generations of leaders, which focused on age diversity, a military and veterans network, pride employee networks, Latinos, and Indigenous networks, just to name a few. So, here we're going to pause and launch a poll around employee resource groups. Please take a minute or two to answer the question. I'm curious to know, what employee resource groups have you been a part of? How many? Or is this a new concept? Because maybe you work at a small company, or maybe you're an entrepreneur. Employee resource groups are definitely great resources. Some larger companies have these more at their disposal, but there's also some great organizations broader that can help or be resources even for small companies as well. Great community and educational resources too. So, Jess, I will ask you to share those results from the poll. Hopefully, everyone had time to answer. Great. Yes. Employee resource groups are areas that focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within an organization. And they can be groups of allies or those from that are represented from that specific population. And typically, those groups share resources, career opportunities, and maybe tools and ways of helping that community thrive within a business or an organization. Great. Thanks for sharing and answering that poll. So, next, we're going to talk about intentional team building and how do we solicit these diverse thoughts. So, if we take this mindset of diversity by design, it starts from how we look to form our teams. So, can we actively seek out candidates from different backgrounds or abilities or experiences? And that helps us to create that foundation workforce that has diversity at its core. There are also specific recruitment channels that cater to underrepresented groups. There are disability networks, neurodiversity focused organizations, diversity recruiting networks that can help you be very intentional about how you look at sourcing and finding a broad swath of qualified candidates. Once you get people to join your organization, you have to get them to want to stay there. So, fostering that inclusive culture is creating that ability where they have that work environment where they feel safe to share ideas, there's psychological safety, there's good exchange of perspectives, inclusive language. Those core company behaviors are reflected in values. And you also have that diversity and inclusion training for employees to help build that awareness and continue to infuse that throughout the organization. Next, best practice design. So, inclusive design practice can be a standard for all projects. So, within your DevOps process, uh, definitely there are sometimes solutions that are geared towards those within underrepresented groups, but that's not the only solution where you would leverage the inclusive design practice. So, consider your physical and your digital spaces. What solutions, softwares, tooling, accessibility physically do you have to help all employees? Regularly review your design practices and ensure they accommodate all users. Embed systems thinking and ask good questions. Maintain a curiosity and that intentional focus on overlooked user populations. Scale that center of excellence around your diversity best practice. The best organizations have great engagement and collaboration. So, feedback was a theme in earlier DASA Connect sessions, and take that theme and continue it through this session as well. So, what's that broad user base that's a part of the design process? What are those broad stakeholder groups that are a part of your project leadership and part of your project uh, improvement process? Collaborate with advocacy groups, create co design practices. Then the next part goes to leading with diversity. So, as a leader, and as you look at growing in your leadership, each leader needs to walk the walk. And that was what was asked of me. So, model those inclusive behaviors, champion diversity initiatives, and be a part of the change. Recognize and reward that diverse thinking, celebrate the successes where you implemented that design thinking appropriately and got those better business results. Then create dynamic partnerships with educational institutions, nonprofits, and those advocacy organizations, and then maintain that center of excellence. Now, diversity has to be more than just a tagline or something that goes on your company's website. It really needs to be about goals, KPIs, continuous improvement. So, what are your inclusive hiring practices? How are you measuring those on an annual or biannual basis? How are you tracking diversity within your workforce? How are you intentionally looking at departments and leadership growth? Uh, Take those key performance indicators, share those with your leaders across organizations, and help them understand diversity and inclusion targets, help them understand the departments that are doing really well and how those KPIs are helping their business be more successful. So, inclusive design really supports everyone. And in preparing for this session, it was really fun to spend some time looking at software, looking at technology and products that were designed for a specific population, but have just these broad reaching humanitarian benefits. So, what is inclusive design? It is a process that ensures software, products, services, and environments are accessible and usable by as many people as possible. And that is age agnostic, ability agnostic, gender agnostic, regardless of ethnicity or any other defining characteristic. That inclusive design accounts for diverse needs and perspectives. It improves output and it encourages your designers and your leaders to consider variations of user needs, preferences, project implementation, and just really be infused throughout any core business process. So, here we're going to talk a little bit about innovation and what innovations have been created that help to really embody some inclusive design processes, and then also had that output of really helping a much broader user base and looking at a broader design thinking. So, accessible smart home devices, text to speech, audiobooks, your voice assistant, be it Siri or Google, closed captioning, speech to text, those bone conduction headphones that runners like me often wear, um, software solutions like Grammarly or um, Trello, Calm, there have been so many innovations that have been sparked by those that have that identify in a diverse way, or also these innovations that were created specifically for diverse populations actually have a better humanitarian good that has been created by helping and thinking about how it can translate to help all people or populations and really go broader than just the initial target user group. So, another statistic, people with disabilities are 15% of the world's population. So, if you never consider design or inclusion tied to that 15%, you're definitely ostracizing a part of your market share, a part of your qualified candidate hiring pool. That's an incredible amount of talent and product usability, purchasing power. And so, definitely be aware of just what a powerful driver that population is. I love this visual because this visual from Microsoft, their inclusive 101 design guidebook, helps to also think how um, really identifying the personas in inclusive design benefits so many. So in this example, there are kind of four different senses represented, and within each of those senses, there is kind of a permanent, uh, temporary, and situational persona that are benefited by thinking about designing things for touch. So if you're thinking about touch, you can help support someone that only has one arm, or someone that has a temporary arm injury, or maybe a new parent that is often holding a toddler on their hip. If you think about sensory design for those thinking about the sense of hearing, you could account for the person who is deaf, the person who maybe has an ear infection. You can think about those who work in noisy areas where it's hard to hear because of so much background noise. And so I love this image because it really helps to think about inclusive design and how many personas it can help, no matter their situation or ability. And I think that that's just a really powerful way of considering extending your design process, and then asking those important questions, considering that broader user group, that broader usability. So, diverse minds and dynamic solutions has some really powerful output. So, organizations that really focus on their diversity, equity, and inclusion. They have improved overall innovation. Their products, software solutions, their implementations have a better user experience. They're thinking about that broader user population. Customer satisfaction grows as an output of leveraging these practices. They can tap into that broader market share and really tackle that larger group of potential customers. Also, your are laws and accessibility guidelines that are a part of business operations. And so you ensure compliance. You can improve your brand reputation. Um, I think Logitech had an adaptable kind of gaming release, and they saw a brand reputation increase just through that release that um, increased their brand awareness throughout quite a large amount of their population. And then also employees and your talent. They want to see a diverse team in a place where they feel like they can thrive. They're also incredibly mission driven. And so, solving for creating a place where they would feel empowered and able to create these great dynamic solutions and bring their authentic selves to work will help in your employee retention and attracting the top talent that you want to help you scale your organization. And it just is good business all the way around. So, we will include and share some additional resources and sources as we take some questions at the end. We will also add some of these to the chat so that you can learn and study more. Um, Jess, could we please launch the secondary poll? Yeah, text to speech was my number one inclusive design that I use every single day. But I think that this presentation helps to really reinforce that these innovations are just so helpful for the overall population, regardless of ability or background. And so when we think about diversity and embedding that throughout our organizations, we can just create better products overall. So thanks for that. If you have some additional great ideas around diverse innovations and their input and impact on you and your organization, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also really interested. How are you implementing inclusive design? So that can be something that you add to the chat. And if we run out of time, you're also welcome to send this to me in a connection through the Desk Connect platform or on LinkedIn. Well, then we will pivot to the Q&A. Yes. So I have just pivoted from the presentation to the Q&A. Yeah, I really think that inclusive innovation has helped to provide competitive edge to organizations. So I think I used that Logitech example of how they had catered an adaptive product that increased their brand awareness. If you think about Google and Apple and how they have stayed on top of some of the voice and accessibility design in your phones and things that you use every day. Those innovations as they've released newer software, I think have really made a big difference in continuing to be a top inclusive innovator. And then also a lot of that inclusive design has had broader utility throughout their user base. Great question. One of the questions is employee engagement still important in organizations post the pandemic, or has it faded away? I would say that there was a heightened awareness during the pandemic for employee engagement with the return to back to office, and then also just some differences in social circumstance. I have seen companies invest less overall. Part of that could be due to economic conditions. I think it is still as important today as it ever has been. But I do think that investment in those areas shifts based on um, trends that are economic, or also some trends in what's happening situationally. Okay. Oh, some other really awesome questions. What are some effective ways to involve underrepresented groups in the innovation process? Um, so I think tied to involving underrepresented groups, or thinking about just design and innovation. I think in one of the sessions that we had talked about before, there was also some discussion of hackathons, and typically a hackathon is a great way of kind of creating an incubator for innovative thought. But typically, hackathons are also they're also done through like an invitation, and kind of purposely putting together different teams. And so thinking about how you might create your hackathon group, or as you're building, outside of the hackathon process in a normal kind of design environment, how are you involving how are you forming those teams to start with, to have groups within the innovation process? Or if you're a small organization and you work largely with user groups, what do your user groups look like, where you're getting feedback on your products and solutions that you can pull into the innovation process? And that could be through surveys, or meetings, user group facilitation, and then look at kind of a disparate view of different users that can help give you a lens on various needs and represent your different user base. Great. Future trends in inclusive innovation, and how can organizations prepare for them? Well, I definitely think that AI is going to continue to help inclusive innovation pivot. However, AI also is an area where the way that the models have been trained, and leveraging some of the modeling, there's a deep opportunity to help that data, that modeling, that training, be more diverse in nature. So as organizations begin to use more and more AI, how are they accounting for areas where leveraging the AI might exclude underrepresented um, populations, and how can they create those diverse user groups, those um, how can they create the human check and balance practice, knowing some of the limitations in the models, and some of those things to be aware of. So I think really I've been thinking about that question a lot, in terms of how leaders can both embrace AI, but uh, be advocates for continuing this theme of inclusive innovation, by understanding, pushing for changing the models, continually creating best practices around how to leverage the benefits, while also being aware of any challenges or limitations. How important is leadership in driving inclusive innovation, and what qualities should leaders possess to be effective in this role? Um, I think that having your leaders create the inclusive culture from top down is incredibly important. I think that that creates a framework and the core cultural values for an organization. Leaders need to be empathetic and good listeners. They need to be continual learners. No one has all of the knowledge and all of the solutions on how to be inclusive at all times for every population. And so it's really embracing that continuous learning mindset, being open to feedback, and innovation and criticism on continually improving both their understanding and the ways to infuse inclusivity into the DNA of their culture and the organization, and then staying on top of best practices so that they can really continue to be a leader. What role does technology play in facilitating or hindering inclusive innovation? So, we talked a little bit about AI and some of the uh, ways where those models may not always help create that inclusive innovation inherently. But we, as people training those models, have that ability to create and harness change in that realm. But technology is a huge driver. I think in the HR space, there's been incredible advances in kind of helping to helping to create new solutions around sourcing diverse candidates, as well as like maybe blinding candidate information to take out implicit bias from potential hiring managers. There's the technology that helps to kind of create and maybe a closed captioning or different ways to make interviewing more accessible for those that are interviewing for a position. And so I think technology is an incredible enabler. I think that we have to use those best practice design and evaluation to ensure that the technology that is picked is accessible for your organization, for your population, and then to continue to ask good questions and challenge if it's not working for your organization. Okay, great. Well, I would like to thank everyone for joining today. I love the questions. Dr. Owen, I will be reaching out to you on LinkedIn and would love to hear more about your great questions as well as your inclusive innovation. Anyone who is that curious is sure to be a leader in this space. Um, and I would just challenge all of you to think about being inclusive leaders, thinking about incorporating design thinking as you ideate on your next big project, your next product, your next um, process solution. How can you be more inclusive? Thank you for your time, and I enjoy DASA Connect.